Hi, I'm Sarah Hill. I'm the CEO of Bookstr. We are lucky enough today to have David Monn, author of The Art of Celebrating, with us here today. I'll let you see the book a little bit closer if you can. We have him to answer your questions about his book and also about the do's and don'ts of holiday celebrating, since it's that time of year. I know we have a ton of questions for you. I have some questions for you. You are also the White House party planner, which I can't even imagine the scope of that job. And you talk about that a little bit, I think, in your book. So yeah, David, thank you for being here. Again, if you're here, don't forget to ask us questions. Questions for David about the do's and don'ts of holiday celebrating. I'm having those questions fielded to me right now on my phone. So literally, if you want an expert, now's the time to ask.
Well, thank you. First off, I'm honored and happy to be here. I mean, this book was 2.5, almost 3 years in a process, so to be here on your show is really, really special. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Absolutely. Okay, so first to kick us off, one question I have is, should I have a centerpiece? Because I know, like, millennials these days, sometimes they're like, oh, skirt the centerpiece, like, we don't need it. Should we have one? And if we do, what would be the perfect centerpiece for a Christmas or Hanukkah celebration?
It's a great question. So, you know, my nieces and nephews are millennials. I didn't even think I still think I am, but I actually now have to own up that I'm not. But,
I think you qualify.
But you know, what I've tried in this book to give to people is that we do have rituals, okay, and the rites and rituals as to who we are make us. And I love history. So even though we want to be modern, it does not mean we should ever forget the past. And I always say this, that we must know who we were to know who we are to decide who we want to be. So there's ritual and there's process. So when we're sitting down at a table, so I would say your holiday table, what time of the day is it? And in daylight, if you're eating in the afternoon, never put a candle out because candlelight is for when it turns dark, even if it's seemingly romantic or it's seeming holiday and festive. But to that point, if you're doing a holiday dinner, and I know that probably the thing we have the least amount today of, and it's the most expensive thing we have, is time. Yeah. And so making something that we have that is around, and I actually do love candles. I love it. Nothing but candles, mismatched even, or I would say eclectic. Is actually a beautiful thing. So having that for the evening that does not require flowers or does not require other sort of creative talent to do is the standby, and you should always have that.
Different sizes or
all different sizes, different candle holders. Different elevations. Elevations, I'm glad you brought that up, because elevations are always important because the eye needs to see it. It's why a mountain range is pretty and a desert leaves us looking for something. The mirage that we create is because our eye is always looking for that. So levels. And the thing that I really, really, really love to use, and it's easy to do, and in particular, grapes. And I'm a monochromatic. I love one color. You'll see through the book that I think, and most of the things that I do throughout the book and through any of my clients, is this process of editing. When we edit down to one color and one item, it becomes actually simpler. The next thing to do with that, though, is to multiply it so that you have scale. Okay. So if I were using green grapes, I would use Granny Smith apples and limes and do an entire thing of greens, and you're on a white tablecloth and you're ready for the holiday.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's kind of easy. Simple. That's much easier than I would think. My mom makes like amazing centerpieces, and I haven't really tried my hand at it. So I'll try that.
Well, try fruit.
See what I can do.
Try fruit first.
Okay.
And the beautiful part about that is using grapes, apples, that people will actually encourage people to eat them at the table.
How fun.
And it becomes another communal. I always say that when I'm successful at a dinner table is that when I've created an atmosphere or something in the table that requires the lean in.
Oh, okay.
If you're leaning in, you are engaged with that energy that happens. It's, you know, it's not just action, it's the energy that's happening. And leaning in means to me that it's a sign that we've created. So, you know, going in to eat the centerpiece is a leaning in moment.
How fun is that too? Because you're kind of like bringing something that's could be so stale or stagnant into, you know, life, you know.
And not formal, by the way.
Yeah, not formal at all. I see that we do have a few questions, and some of these are pretty broad. First of all, thank you guys again for joining us, and we are with the White House party planner, but he's also much more than that, David Monn, talking about the art of celebrating. And I see some questions here, but again, feel free to send in more, and we will, David, answer those for you. Let's see, first and foremost, this is a good question. How do you feel about artificial trees?
Oh, I love them.
Okay.
Absolutely love them because I like shape. Shape always is, perfect proportion and scale is important. But I use artificial trees as the base all the time. But I will go back in and put something live in it. For instance, this year, I'm on a big boxwood. My theme this year seems to be boxwood. I'm using boxwood everywhere, right?
Okay.
Because you got it outside, and you need to prune back for the fall.
Yeah.
And I'll take an artificial tree. I like pre-lit ones as well.
Okay.
Eliminate that.
Okay.
What I do not like, and we could talk for a brief second, because it's a very big concern for me is the source of light, and LED light is something that we are using more and more and more today, and in the millennial, it is something that is also considered to be energy efficient, but I think we've missed an entire segment of what that light does, and that light does not, it's not a form of conduction that is the same energy as anything Edison is fire-based,
right,
which we relate to.
Yeah.
LED pushes us away. So I don't like and don't use anything that's an LED light because they appear cold and you can feel them. You can see this yourself.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so I'll take the tree and then pieces of boxwood and I stick it into the tree so it has this entirely new texture.
Okay.
So, yes. Love an artificial tree.
Great. Okay. To know. Thank you guys again. We are fielding questions live with the author, David Monn. Another question that we have is, one is, what is the book about? I think that is a really good question because I took it myself. It's a gorgeous book full of pictures, which I love, and was like, I'm going to put it out, people can look at the pictures, and then I started reading it and I couldn't stop reading it. I was like, this is beautiful. It's absolutely, the writing is fantastic. So can you maybe speak to that a little bit?
Yes, the great fortune to be able to create, and when I set out to do and it's why it's in the title, it was never about a business per se for me. It was about creating art, and art as in the beauty and the why. And what I struggled with for many years, I've had probably some of the most incredible opportunities that any one human has ever been given to create. And what I never wanted it to do was to be a book that would be about these elaborate, extravagant things that people could not have. Sure. I grew up a really, really simple boy. I'm one of 6 children from a 2-bedroom house in a farm town in Pennsylvania. And I say simple, and that was really code words for poor.
Yeah.
So the things that I've had in my life have been really great blessings. And I never wanted anyone to look at this and not be able to get something from it themselves.
Sure.
And what the book is based on is are 3 core principles: authenticity, scale, and detail. And when you engage those 3 items or those three categories, and understand what they mean. And I take you through what do they mean. What does authenticity mean? Authenticity is who are you? A client comes to me with a party, and it's so funny in my company, they know that if anybody comes to me and says they have a theme, they're like, oh no, this isn't going to work. I'm not going to do it. Because I don't believe in themes. Sure. I think you are the theme.
Yeah.
What the occasion is the theme. Now the next step is to understand more of who are you. And in the book, in the beginning, when I talk about rituals, there's a bat mitzvah and a bar mitzvah. And they're both very, very different. The bar mitzvah is a boy, a young boy. One of the most incredible experiences for me, because this young boy came to, he was, his father was Jewish, his mother was not, and his mother was Asian, so he was a mixed race child. And that identity in New York City as a Jewish boy, Asian, already is a bit of an anomaly.
Yeah.
And I understood that he was not so interested in having this bar mitzvah. And he came to my office. I wanted to know a little bit about him. What do you like to do? What are your things? And he was interested, and he was sitting with a book on his lap at my conference table, and he was writing, and I thought he was doing his homework. And quite honestly, I'm not a parent, and I probably never should be a parent. I was a little annoyed. I was like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And I went over to the side of the table, and I looked at what he was working on, and I was absolutely captured. This boy was doing these unbelievable graffiti drawings.
Oh, wow.
And his mother was like, no, his father doesn't like that he does that. It's doodling. And this is extraordinary.
Yeah.
And I then knew, and I said to him, oh my gosh, let me see these. They're incredible. Yeah. And he lit up. I knew I had found out who he was.
That's amazing.
And the entire party, and you can see it in the book, it's one of the things I'm most proud of, because it was this graffiti party. I took him over to a place that sadly is no longer in existence. It was called 5 Points. It was a building over in Long Island City where graffiti artists could come in and paint every day.
Yeah.
And I took him and I met the guy who was the sort of the kingpin of the studio, or of the building. And he painted all of this young boy's drawings.
Wow.
And we created this entire script. We painted the furniture, and he became the cool kid.
And it was close to his identity as well.
And it was him. I mean, it was truly his, and it was his tag that we used. And another one in the book was a young man who wanted to be, and has since gone on to become a veterinarian. And she only cared about one thing really, well, two things really, horses and candy. And in the book you will see that I created these topiaries, these life-size horse topiaries that greeted the guests as you came in.
Oh, wow.
And then the centerpieces were all made from candy, and very uniquely. So actually, if I can pull it up quickly and just give you a little show of it, because it's really pretty wonderful. They were all made from jelly rings and frogs and lollipops, and it was really one of the things that I.
Oh yeah, that's gorgeous.
You can see this. This is all candy frogs, and little mint balls, and we glued them all together, and then made them into this centerpiece. And the hard part was trying to get people not to eat them. The kids
you're like, there's glue on that.
But the point back to is that it's about who you are.
Yeah.
And then it is the scale, large scale, life-size scale, and then detail. Who, again, are you in the littlest detail if it's simply a thread?
That's so
that's
beautiful.
What the book is based on. And I think, I always used to say, I mean, I never went to college. It was something I carried as something I was very shameful for a very long time in my life. And New York City became my university.
Yeah,
the streets.
Well, it's a good one.
It is a good one.
It's a tough one.
And but what I believe that I've done, and it was actually the original title that I wanted the book to be, and the publisher convinced me not, because it would never find its way on a shelf. Was entitled Curiosity.
Okay.
Because I believe that we do not need to be creative to create. We must first be curious.
Sure.
And so if we're curious, we look, we find, and then we use all those things we discover and we use them as the tools to create with.
That's so beautiful. That really is. That's fantastic. And we have a ton of questions flooding in. Please continue to send in questions for David. Obviously, he is a wealth of knowledge and inspiration for what you can do in holidays or how you should handle events in your life, fun things like that. One question that we have is, what was your favorite new idea with the client that you've worked with?
Favorite new idea?
Is there anything? I mean, you've done really interesting things from like Chanel fashion shows to bat mitzvahs. Like, was there anything that came to you?
I think one was the thing that I was most challenged with was Tiffany. The House of Tiffany came to me and asked me to present a collection of jewelry, a very, very exquisite, high-end collection, and they wanted it to be shown in a way it had never been seen before.
Oh, that's tough.
And what I thought about for a while was jewelry as it sits on a case is, it's sort of flat, it doesn't feel like something, it's this, but when you put it onto a being, it starts to have another feeling.
Yeah.
And so what I realized was, it's about the heartbeat. So then I needed it to be on something living, and I did not want it to be a cliche and be about beautiful girls.
Right.
I didn't want it to be about a fashion show. And so the idea that I came up with was to create living bisque dolls that were all dressed in paper.
Okay.
Paper dresses, and it's actually in the book. And it was I think one of the most exciting ideas that I came up with, and the challenges was to make dresses wearable.
Yeah.
I made it a little bit more challenging for myself. Was that everything had to be filled. So it's one of the dresses was made from packing material from Crate and Barrel.
Oh my gosh!
And they were literally wearable dresses that were all paper.
How fun is that?
It was fun. It was a lot of fun.
I can only imagine the challenges that came with paper dress.
Yeah. Dancing.
How did you do the research for your book, and what's the message to young aspiring writers? And just before you answer that question, I'll give you a second to think about that. Thank you again for joining us with Facebook Live. We are here with Monn, who is the author of The Art of Celebrating, this beautiful book right here. And he is here to answer your questions. So again, feel free to ask questions. We have one right now that says, how do you do the research for your book, and what's the message to young aspiring writers that you...
That's a very hard one, because originally the book was being written by someone else, and when I saw it, was because I never considered myself to be a writer, and I was very sort of daunted by it. What I was able to do, and I applied the same thing to my work that I did to the writing, which was simply tell the truth of telling the story. And then it became very easy and to get the guts of it. And then I had a very, very, very dear friend who is probably one of the most, her tenacity is, I call her, she's a terrier. She loves Cairn Terriers, and she's like a Cairn Terrier. They never give up. Was to distill it.
Sure.
And make certain that there was nothing superfluous. My work in the things that we create, many years ago, one of the people that helped shape my eye and how I look is the designer Bill Blass. And Bill would say that only a true artist can edit his own work. And that's a very hard thing to do, be secure to do that.
Yeah.
And security as an artist is almost impossible, because I think our insecurity of our art.
Absolutely.
And so how to do that in a way that it edits. And so I've looked at my work constantly to edit it and remove something that isn't necessary. And as I refine and refine and refine, I get to, I think, the cleanest and the clearest. And that's what I did to the writing. And so I can say to the person who wrote that question, the hardest part for me was to not give up. And that, I think, is the key to absolutely every single thing that I've ever done. And when you think you are so tired of it and you just don't give a rat, and you want it.
And you can say it, I think, but you don't have to.
And I was there many, many, many times.
Yeah.
I came back to that old cliche that it's 10% inspiration, 90% perspiration.
Okay.
And had I gone through the finish line? And so, never give up, I think, is the other key to it.
That's beautiful. What made you become an event interior designer, an event planner? How did you go to college?
Yeah.
How did you find this path?
That question is, is a 35-year journey, actually. And I had the first dream of being a fashion designer. That was what I wanted to come to New York. Came to New York at 17 to chase that dream. And I discovered that I was not, it didn't come from me as naturally as I saw it from other people around me. And so, I'm a type A OCD Leo. So I knew I needed to get someplace else that I was, going to be the leader of the pack. And in interior design, and I can say that I always, as a young child, which is why I believe in blessings to such a degree, because I have 6 brothers and sisters who could not put blue and blue together and get blue, and it was always natural to me. I think what I've only recently, because this question is asked of me often of late, was that I grew up in an environment that was not very nice. I knew that I was interested in creative things from a very young child. When I had my oldest brother was a star football jock. My father was a military guy. My brother was a football jock. All my siblings were athletes.
Yeah.
And I liked to make flower arrangements.
Yeah.
And take the lace tablecloth of my grandmother's and drape it over the neighbor girl and make a wedding dress. And it was not it wasn't popular at all.
Sure.
But I daydreamed, and I created places in my mind to I think escape where I was. And so that has been the story of my whole life. And I have had very interesting paths. So I first started in fashion, then I moved to doing interior design, and from that, one of my design clients had a jewelry manufacturing company and asked me to join the company, and together helped to grow that to a very large company. It was not creative at all. It was very mechanical, very, very successful, one of the country's largest jewelry suppliers. But I was miserable every day of my life. And 13 years ago, on August the 8th, because I did it on my birthday, I said, I'm done with this. I used to say to people that if you have a semblance of intelligence, and you've been gifted with a talent, and you're unhappy, the answer to that question of why is in the mirror. You need to search for it.
Yeah.
And I was that. And so I thought, and I had no idea what I was going to do. I had always done entertaining and parties for myself or my friends, never as a business. And I can say this because I think today it's a different world. I carried a bit of the shame that I never wanted to be called a party planner.
Okay.
Which is why for me it's never been about parties. It's been about celebrating and art. It's something very different. Not a semantic word, but actually the content of it's very different.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do something that was beautiful. and my best friend convinced me to do her daughter's wedding for fun, and I never worked so hard in my life, and I was happy. And so there you go. That's where the story of this chapter began, and now it's even more fun.
That's great. All right, I think.
Can I answer 2 questions you had on our we talked about earlier?
Absolutely.
Because it's stuck in my mind,
sure.
and I love it because, you know, as I said earlier, it's not about being old-fashioned. It's not about being stuffy. It's actually about caring and caring about yourself. I was saying to you earlier something that's really, really important, and I think that how we feel is actually who we are, and how we treat ourselves is a part of how we feel.
Yeah.
From earlier was, is it okay to use plastic silverware on a larger party? And I'm going to say no. And the reason no is because our lips touch plastic silverware. We're worth better than that. We've become, over time, it's not about whether you can afford it. It's okay if it's mismatched. Borrow your neighbors and borrow your best friends if you're having more than you have. But a plate, I'm okay with a decent throwaway plate. But I touch this, and what does that feel like? So it's about, I think, not just valuing our time, because our time is the most expensive thing we have, but we should be valuing ourselves and how we feel, and beauty matters. It's not an esoteric thing. It's a real tangible emotion. So
that's beautiful. That's very, very beautiful. I know, like, my family's listening and they're like, see, Sarah, we told you no paper plates.
Oh no.
But I'm listening. I mean, I think that's really stunning. It's absolutely.
And you don't have to burden yourself. I mean, like, I mean, people would think that I am the pretty grand entertainer, and I can tell you that when I have a dinner at home, I love buffet because I can have my favorite things that I love, and people will come that maybe have never come before and say, I have got to have your recipe for fried chicken. And is it your grandmother's? Did you soak it overnight? What's the big secret? And I can tell you the secret is on Lexington Avenue between 27th and 28th, and it's called Popeyes. That's the secret, because I'm not going to make one that's better. It's know where to go to get the best of what you can get. And I don't have time to do that. But I do have silverware.
There you go. It's gorgeous. And then what is the other question that you wanted to answer? You said there was another one here.
You know, the principle of how and the senses and the senses. And I think this comes back to something that's really, 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 and I'd love if everyone could take away from this today, because we think that our brain does the things that we do, and our brain does not. Our brain actually is the mainframe that logs these things, but what really creates who we are our senses. And our senses and how they're engaged is very, very important. There's a rhythm to our senses, and they begin in a way that we don't think of, and they begin with our sense of smell first. Our sense of smell connects next to our sense of sound, and then our sense of sight. And that order and that rhythm is how we work. I always tell people to think about the most beautiful thing they've ever seen. Now, smell garbage. You'll never disconnect it. It cannot be beautiful. And the same thing with the smell of a pie. You will immediately, it will take you to your grandmother, or it will take you to a holiday. So that's how powerful the sense of smell is. We wake up in the morning, we go to bed at night. Lavender, we've often known, you know, if you can't sleep or you have trouble sleeping, lavender will help you calm. So when we think about how that works for us in our day-to-day life, whether it's our workplace or whether it's our home, that if we've engaged and we're thinking about smell, sound, sight, then we get to, we're intrigued. So then we want to touch it. And then the last sense that comes in, should it be a part of that activity, is taste. Taste cannot happen without smell. So now it's a complete circle. and it's in evolution all the time. So, and that experience, a lot of people talk about creating experiences, and they don't really, I think, know what are the things that are needed to create an experience.
Absolutely.
And it's that sequence of how our senses engage. So whatever that experience that we want to create may be, always know that first, what should that place smell like? What should it sound like? And what should it look like? If you have those three things together, then you will have started the body vibrating in a way that it's going to want to touch it and be in it, and then partake of it.
How beautiful. All right, let's see. We have, you know, it's so funny. I love it. You're so inspiring that a lot of these questions aren't about, you know, about the book at all.
The book. Pick up the book and buy the book. You can get that later. Let's stick to the good questions.
Yeah, you will get answers to some of these questions in the book just by the way how well it's done. But I would say one last question, you know, let's see, I mean, there's a few really good questions on here, but, and maybe you can go back through and answer them or something like that.
Sure, we'd love to.
But it says, you know, what motivates you?
Oh, wow, that's a
hard question.
That's a hard one. But what motivates me more, may sound corny and a cliche, what really, really motivates me is being able to make a difference for someone and giving them the tools. Sure. We will answer these questions because I love that people actually are thirsting for what I care about, and I care passionately that we are not going to hell in a handbasket, as my grandmother would say, but I do believe the way we live is actually going to hell if we don't drop the handbasket and care. Yeah. And I love that people care and want to know. So for me, what motivates me is actually being able to give somebody information and then see that they've actually used it and it's made a difference for them, because it does make a difference. Yeah. Every little thing does matter. And so that motivates me more than anything. I mean, beauty, I think there's not a day goes by, and I think that it's understood times where is something a tool and where is something a weapon, and I think that our iPhones are both at the same time, and they are the most extraordinary tool that we have. They can become the weapon that can remove us from life. Sure. And there is not a day that now, even myself, and I have to catch myself, I said New York City was my university, and it was. There was. I can tell you that, I mean, and coming down to your studio is, I want to look around and just be on the streets because it's a part of town that I'm not in all the time, and to look and see something because there is something that I know that I'm going to find today that will be different and impress me. And a lot of the time today we're busy looking down, not up, and I think that is the thing that I strive to do all the time, is to make sure I'm looking up. That's great. That's really good advice. It's so easy to, I'm really guilty of this, but we all are. Yeah, to be looking down and not even paying attention. I think, sometimes you don't even remember the skyline. I'll be in the cab and I'm like, I'm in New York. It's sunny today. Yeah, it's sunny outside, or it's raining, or whatever. I think that's great. And again, we have some really wonderful questions just about specific details that people do for their holiday party. I think we can go through and respond to those, or you can. And I remember there was one question you had asked me earlier about a holiday, what's to take as a gift, and I said the thing not to take as a gift today is to take someone liquor or wine, and I'm often asked why do I do that, because 20 years ago, taking somebody a bottle of wine or a bottle of champagne was actually... We in this country have become much more educated and much more versed on wines and liquors, that it's a very personal thing now. Mm. And I find that if you're going to a dinner party of someone and you're taking them a bottle of wine, number one, there's obviously going to be more than 4 people at that or 3 people at that dinner, 1 bottle of wine isn't going somewhere, isn't going to really go anywhere, and it's already not a bottle of wine that's already part of what they're serving. So it just becomes part of this collection, and nobody drinks one bottle of wine anymore. And so I'm sure the alcohol companies are not loving me saying this, and I'm not going to get an alcohol sponsorship coming up soon. But that's not the gift to take today.
So what would be a good idea of a gift?
I am a sweet freak, and I love taking people really unique candies, whether it's caramels or chocolates. I mean, because I am just a sweet-aholic. There's not a place that I don't go. Of course, I have to test it to make sure it's okay. But taking somebody something that's unique and personal in the sweets or something that's fun, because it doesn't have to be about the dinner.
Yeah. Okay, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for all of your advice and for sharing a little bit about your book and about just some of your experiences. I know that I've seen just a ton of people popping in and out. I know that our audience really appreciates it. So thank you for spending that time with us today.
Thank you. This has been a real treat, and I'm honored. I'm loving what you do, and it's,
thank you.
To be here is a real special treat.
Thank you. And then for you guys at home, don't forget, this is the book. It's The Art of Celebrating You. You can buy it now on our site, and 50% of the profits will go to a charity or the site for that matter, because it's helping spread the love of celebrating, which is what we want to do, especially this time of year. And also, don't forget, if you want to learn more about David and his journey, visit www.davidmonn.com. That's DAVIDMONN.com. If you can't, hear it, you can see it, or it will pop up. Anyways, thank you again for joining us at Bookstr, and we will see you very soon.